Let's face it, we all use AI to write stuff. I mean, come on. Whether you're trying to make an email sound a bit more professional, or you just want your social media post to hit a little harder, these large language models have basically become our go-to writing assistants.
And the big tech companies, they are all in on this. You've got tools like Spark Plus AI and, of course, the big one, Apple Intelligence, all promising to help us tweak our words until the tone is, and I'm quoting here, just right.
Now, that sounds great, right? Super helpful. But it brings up a really important question. When we let an algorithm adjust our tone, is it just making us sound better, or is it subtly changing the core emotion of what we were trying to say in the first place? Well, this isn't just some late-night philosophical thought. A fascinating new research paper decided to dig into this exact question. They've designed an experiment to see what actually happens to our words and our feelings when they get churned through these AI models over and over again. So, let's dive into what the paper calls our rephrased reality. The researchers wanted to see if these LLMs could be creating a kind of emotional sameness across all of our digital conversations. Okay, so how in the world do you measure something like that? Well, they came up with a pretty clever digital stress test for these AI models, specifically to see how the emotion of a message changes with each rewrite. And the key idea they were testing is a concept they call sentiment drift. You can think of it like that game of telephone you played as a kid. Does a message that starts out really angry or super happy stay that way after an AI has had its hands on it a few times? Or does that emotional meaning drift? Their experimental setup was actually beautifully simple. First, they grabbed 500 Amazon reviews, real-world stuff, and sorted them into 5 buckets, from the most negative 1-star reviews to the most positive 5-star ones. Then, they fed this text to the AI models with a really simple instruction: reword this. After the AI reworded it, they measured the sentiment of the new text. And here's the kicker. They then fed that new text back into the same AI and did it again, 50 times in a row for each review. And they didn't just use one AI. Nope. They put 4 different models to the test. You had the big one, GPT-4o, the massive state-of-the-art model. And then they compared it against 3 really popular open-source models that people like you and me can actually run ourselves: Llama 3, Mistral, and the smaller Phi 2. This gave them a great way to compare the commercial giant against the accessible alternatives. So what happened? What did they find after running all of these tests? Honestly, the results are pretty striking, and a very clear pattern started to show up, especially with those open source models. And here it is, the main finding. The 3 open source models all had a consistent positivity drift. That means they systematically took negative or even neutral text, and over time just kept nudging it to sound more and more positive. GPT-4o, on the other hand, was incredibly stable. It did a much, much better job of keeping the original emotion, whether it was positive or negative. And this table right here really quantifies that difference. Just look at the angriest, most negative reviews. They started with a sentiment score of negative 0.85. After 50 cycles through the small Phi 2 model, that score jumped all the way to negative 0.10. It became almost completely neutral. But with GPT-4o, that same review barely changed at all, ending up at negative 0.82. The smaller model essentially erased all the anger. The researchers warn that this could lead to what they call a homogenization of emotion. Think about it. If the smaller, more widely available AI models are constantly sanding down the rough edges and making everything sound a bit nicer, we could lose a lot of the nuance and, frankly, the honesty in how we communicate online. Now, just seeing this drift is interesting, but to make it truly scientific, the researchers knew they needed a way to measure it. They needed a scorecard to rate how well these AIs preserved emotion. So that brings up the next logical question, right? How do you actually put a number on an AI's ability to stay true to an emotion? How do you quantify faithfulness? Well, their solution was to create a whole new metric from scratch, and this is a major contribution of the paper itself. They call it the Sentiment Fidelity Score, or SFS. It's this clever score that rolls 3 things into one number: accuracy, did the feeling stay positive or negative, the magnitude of the change, how big was the shift, and its consistency over time. A higher SFS means the model is way better at keeping the original emotion intact. And when you use their SFS metric to create a leaderboard, the results are crystal clear. You can see GPT-4o is just in a league of its own, with a much higher score. It has superior emotional fidelity. Meanwhile, Llama 3 and Mistral are kind of clustered in the middle, and you can see the smaller models really struggle to keep up.
So let's step back for a second. What's the big picture here? What does all this technical research mean for you and me, the people actually using these tools every day? All right, here are the key things to take away. First, those smaller open source LLMs can accidentally sanitize our words, pushing everything towards a bland positive middle. Second, it really seems like model size and complexity matter a lot for preserving emotion. The bigger models are just better at it. This means the tool you pick could have a real impact. And finally, this paper gives the whole AI community a new tool, the SFS, to actually measure and evaluate how well future models handle our emotions.
Now, look, we've just scratched the surface here. The paper itself gets way more technical, and it's a fantastic read if you're into this stuff. So if you really want to get into the weeds, we've dropped the link to the full paper for you to check out.
And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty heavy thought to chew on. These AI tools are designed to help us, right? To make us sound clearer, smarter, better. But as AI becomes the silent ghostwriter for more and more of our lives, this research makes us ask a really important question. Who or what is deciding how we're supposed to feel?